Damn. Look at our mate. He is hot. Look at those arms. Freya mentally rolled her eyes at her she-wolf's drool. She rolled around and purred as Freya kept eye contact with her mate. He had beautiful gray eyes, with a few black flecks in them, and silky black hair that he combed to the side. Freya could almost feel how soft his hair was. Basically, he was stunningly handsome. Also, as her wolf so graciously noted, he had very muscular arms under that navy blue hoodie. Guys in hoodies, her weakness. There was just something very attractive about that. Freya, oh, you have a staring contest. Can I play along? Freya's eyes fell on little Ray, who had climbed onto a bar stool and was staring at her. She was confused for a moment before realizing he was trying to have a staring contest with her. How about we do this after lunch, Ray? She said, reaching over and setting him back on the ground. He shrugged and walked over to the kitchen table where she had put the first batch of cookies. Freya turned her attention back to her mate and swallowed. How did that work exactly? Should I have waited for him to say something? Should I have shaken his hand? What if he thought I was scary? Just shut up and kiss him. Then he would definitely think I am creepy. Her she-wolf snorted and shook out her fur. At least I have an idea what to do. Do you have one, Your Highness? Freya pursed her lips and tried to ignore the lump in her throat. Why doesn't life prepare us for situations like this? Finally, Freya found the courage to take a few steps forward and offer her hand to him. It was probably better to just start. Hey, I am Freya, she smiled, wishing in her mind that she could slap herself for that awkward introduction. Her she-wolf seemed to agree, because she covered her eyes with her paws and shook her head. She waited a few seconds for him to shake her hand, before slowly withdrawing it and coughing awkwardly. Was my greeting really that bad? Her mate seemed to wake up from his daze and walked away without another look or word. She frowned and watched as he sat down at the table to play with Ray, causing her she-wolf to whimper at his lack of appreciation for her. His beta and gamma gave him sympathetic looks before joining their alpha at the table. Slowly, she turned back to the stove to finish frying the roast chicken she had given up on. It felt like an elephant was sitting on her chest, crushing her soul. She had been waiting for her mate for 3 years, since she had turned 20. All of her friends had found their mates within 6 months of her 20th birthday, and she was the awkward third wheel whenever they did anything together. She could not have felt lonelier in the last 3 years, and now it looked like she would most likely have a future alone. Hey, princess? She took a deep breath and turned to her father with an artificial smile. Hey, Dad. Sorry, I realized I left my cookies in the oven when we got to the top of the hill. He chuckled and kissed her hair. It is okay, sweetie. You did not miss much, but did you get a chance to meet the Alpha and his commanders? No, not really. I was in here most of the time, she murmured softly, taking out the last of the chicken pieces and setting them aside. Well, come here. I'll introduce you. Before she could protest, he turned off the stove and pulled her to the table where the 4 of them sat. Sweetie, this is Alpha Zach, Beta Grease, and Gamma Chance. This is my daughter, Freya. He introduced her, unaware of the awkward atmosphere. Zach. I love his name. Freya quietly agreed with her wolf. Even though they had not been in his presence long, they could feel the power emanating from him, making her wolf tremble in her fur. The benefits of being an alpha, I guess, her she-wolf said. The 3 just stared at Freya as she did her best to avoid her mate's gaze. Then Gamma Chance stood up and grabbed her hand. It is a pleasure to meet you, Freya. These rumors do not do your beauty justice. He kissed the back of her hand, letting his lips linger on it a little longer than necessary. Her cheeks turned slightly pink as he winked at her, eyeing his alpha out of the corner of his eye. He is trying to make his alpha jealous, her she-wolf said. Her she-wolf was eager to see Zach's reaction, but Freya did not dare look directly at him, knowing she would probably turn into a quivering pile of mush. Instead, she watched him out of the corner of her eye and saw his fingers tighten around his cookie. She mused, so he was affected by the mating bond. Good to know. Suddenly, he stood up. Alpha Nathan, can I talk to you in private? His father seemed confused but nodded anyway. Sure, we can talk in my office. The two quietly left the kitchen, leaving the others to ponder the situation and listen to Ray noisily eat his cookies. Once they were settled in Alpha Nathan's office, he gave Zach a questioning look. Zach bit his lip and thought about how to break the problem to him gently. Your daughter, Zach began, and this immediately caught his attention, is my mate. Zach waited a few moments to catch himself, but Nathan seemed even more confused than before, which was understandable. Most mates were joined at the hip when they first met, and it is hard to separate them again. He probably wondered why Zach wasn't glued to his daughter at the moment. Zach's wolf growled angrily. He wanted him to go back downstairs and kiss Freya to death. She was extremely attractive, he'd to admit, and she smelled stunning. But she was his Luna, and he'd to make sure she was good enough for the position. She'd to live up to those expectations. I can't take it, not yet, declared Zach. He frowned. Why? If I accept her now, I may regret it in the future. You've to understand that my pack comes first, and I can't have a mate who can't do her job. The frown on his face turned into a glare. Freya was raised to be an alpha. If anything, she is more than qualified to be your Luna. You raised your daughter to be an alpha, when she might have a mate in another pack and would have to move there once she found him, asked Zach incredulously. Alpha Nathan sighed and rubbed the spot between his eyebrows. The future is unpredictable, Alpha Zach. If something happened to me or my wife, who'd take control of the pack? It made sense to teach Freya the rules in case something happened before Oliver was ready to take over the pack. He is still learning, and he is too young. He just turned 20 last summer. Zach's face turned into a confused scowl. Isn't that unfair to Freya? To teach her everything and not give her the position? It almost seemed like they were giving her false hope. Alpha Nathan shook his head. There are some things you don't know, Alpha Zach, and I'd explain it to you, but that is more of her story I'd have to tell. But to give you an idea, we knew from the moment she was born that Freya wasn't going to be a Luna. What? I know this sounds strange, but if you want to know more, Freya will explain. Zach sighed and shook his head. Even though she was raised to be an alpha, I need to make sure she is good enough to be a Luna. We should be working together, not having a power struggle. We'd spend even more time fighting for dominance if she didn't accept her position. After all, as my father said, there are some things that Lunas can do that alphas can't. That doesn't change my opinion, Alpha Nathan. I hope you understand that. If you don't mind, please try to explain it to Freya. I'll extend my stay here to observe her for 1 month. At the end of that month, I'll let you know whether or not I'll take her in. Alpha Nathan seemed very upset. Well, he wasn't the only one. His wolf growled fiercely, trying to convince Zach to stop. This isn't fair to my daughter. You can't forget that you are soulmates first, not Alpha and Luna. Is it fair for you to ask so much of her when she hasn't asked anything of you? She just wants her mate, Alpha Zach. She has no expectations of you like you've of her. That may be, but that is who I am, Alpha Nathan. Please understand that, said Zach, getting up to leave. As expected, he didn't understand why Zach wouldn't accept his daughter. I hope Freya would be more understanding. It is not like I am rejecting her, but you don't accept her either, and that will hurt her feelings, Dixon replied. Zach felt sorry for his wolf, who really just wanted to be with his mate, but it had to be done. And what about her being in heat? You know she is going into heat in 2 days since she found you, Alpha Nathan suddenly exclaimed. Zach froze in the doorway. Damn, he hadn't thought about her heat. Are you seriously going to let mate get chased by a bunch of horny wolves? Just because you can't pull your head out of your ass? Dixon asked. Zack pinched the area between his eyebrows. Damn that stupid heat concept. Who came up with that idea anyway? Aren't wolves horny enough on their own? I'll think of something, Zack muttered, walking out of his office toward the stairs. Let's go see, mate, said Freya's wolf. Her wolf was still upset that Zack hadn't paid attention to her, so Freya wanted to talk to him and see what his problem was. Freya, on the other hand, wanted to wait until he approached her. She didn't want to make a fool of herself and chase after him like a lovesick puppy. There was a reason he hadn't said anything the first time. Besides, they didn't even know what he was like. The only thing they knew were rumors that said he slept around and inflicted cruel punishments for even the slightest mistake. But Freya knew not to trust rumors. They were almost always false. Freya, what are you doing here? Have you lunch? She turned and gave her father a forced smile. I am not really hungry, Dad. She'd lost her appetite after Zack took off with her father. So she went to her room to clear her head. He pursed his lips, stepped into her room, and closed the door behind him. Honey, we need to talk. She could tell by the look on his face that he wasn't happy with what Zack was telling him. She plopped down on the bed and patted the spot next to him. He sat down and looked at her face with a sad smile. I guess I never realized how fast you grew up. My wolf is quite distraught about his pup growing up and finding her mate. She grinned. You are getting old, Dad admitted. I admit I am not as young and vibrant as I used to be, but I can still get women's attention, mind you, he said, giving her a pointed look. If you say so, she chuckled, raising her hands defensively. He shook his head in amusement and ran his fingers through his hair. Sweetie, if you want proof, ask your mother. She'll tell you about my performance last night. Okay, she interrupted him. Forget what I said. I don't want to hear about you and Mom. That is disgusting. She shuddered at the mere thought of what her parents did at night. Luckily, her she-wolf was on the same page as her, covering her eyes with her paws. He gave Freya a grin before his face turned serious again. I'd a talk with Zack. She straightened up and gave him her full attention. He explained to her everything Zack had said about his pack, and that he couldn't accept her without seeing if she was capable enough to be Luna. And while her father talked, she was overwhelmed by different feelings. Bitterness, hurt, disappointment, hunger. She'd never seen an alpha not accept his mate as soon as he saw her. Alphas were said to be even more protective and possessive of their mates than normal wolves. Therefore, rejections were extremely rare. I am sorry, sweetie. I can't imagine how hard this is for you. I can't force him to accept you because he might take that as a threat. She interrupted her father. Of course not, Dad. If he wants me, he'll come to me. We shouldn't have to chase after him. Besides, if Zack really thought her father was threatening him, it could lead to a war because of his stupid alpha pride. The last thing they needed was innocent pack members getting involved in a fight between two mates. That was a big no-no. Their wolf was completely devastated, if her whimpering was any indication. Freya sighed softly and started a conversation with her to improve her mood. Are you okay? Freya asked. I'll be fine. You are right. We shouldn't chase after him. We should just wait and see what happens. Don't give up hope yet. It has only been a few hours. He'll stay for a whole month just to watch us. But what if, after a month, he decides he doesn't want us anymore? Then we move on. Eventually we'll find someone else, Freya concluded. Her wolf winced at the thought, and Freya slapped herself in spirit for her insensitivity. Freya might be hurt, but her wolf was completely heartbroken. The connection she'd with his wolf was much stronger than what Zack and Freya were feeling at the moment. They'd only have the stronger connection if they marked and mated. Freya, Papa. They turned to Oliver, who looked rather uncomfortable for interrupting them. We've to get the campfire ready, remember? His reminder immediately brightened their day, and their wolf seemed a little happier too. Every 3 months they held a campfire as a kind of pack bonding. But this campfire was going to be extra special, not because her mate was there, but because her friend was getting engaged. Freya couldn't be happier for them. Excited, she stood up. "Let's go. We need to get ready and help Tyrese. I am sure he is already panicking." Oliver chuckled and let her and his father pass him first before following them downstairs. The house was full of people cooking and rushing between rooms to get coolers and tables. Freya frowned slightly and looked at the clock to see why everyone was in such a hurry. Her eyes widened, and she ran quickly to the clothes rack. It was 5:30, and the campfire started at 6. "I'll see you later," she called, grabbing her jacket. "I've got some backs to tape up, Oliver. Get your ass out there. We all need to get in formation." "Formation?" She pretended not to hear Zach, who looked at her, frowning. "Dad, when Gabriella comes over, give her something to do to keep her busy until the campfire. We can't have her snooping around the cabin area," she said, taking the tape from Oliver. Nathan nodded and instructed some of the pack warriors to keep an eye on the beer packs. Since the campfire would keep everyone busy, including the pack warriors, no one was allowed to get drunk for safety reasons. If there was an attack, they'd be sober enough to fight. She'd no intention of drinking anyway, for she deeply detested beer. The taste was horrible. "Oliver, do you've the sweatshirts?" "Yes." He pointed to the duffel bag in his hands. "Good. Let's go." Powie. Zach watched as Freya hurried outside with her brother. He thought, what were they doing? What did she mean by formation? His wolf growled angrily at him. "We should go to mate. We won't go near her. We've to watch her first." "You are stupid. Why don't you want to be near your partner?" Zach sighed. His wolf didn't understand his reasoning at all. If Dixon had his way, he'd have marked Freya as soon as he saw her. "Mate's pretty. There will be male wolves staring at her. We both know you can't control yourself when someone behaves inappropriately." Zach tried to ignore his comments, but they got on his nerves. His wolf was right. When someone behaved inappropriately, he couldn't control himself. Freya was beautiful, and there was no doubt that she attracted a lot of male attention. That was the one thing he hated about being an alpha. Every time he got the slightest bit angry or protective, his wolf side would try to come out and attack the cause. Zach just had to keep hoping that nothing would happen at this bonfire. "Damn, that is something. I've never seen a pack gather like that," Reese commented, sipping his beer. Zach gave him a blank look and took a small sip of his own beer. Zach wasn't really in the mood to drink at the moment. His wolf was giving him another headache about his mate. He was tempted to turn it off, but that would probably make him even angrier. Chance nodded in agreement as he literally inhaled his bacon. "We need to have these parties in our pack too. That would be a lot of fun, especially since we've twice as many pack members." Zach's wolf rolled his eyes and continued to go up and down in his head. The only thing he was worried about was finding his mate in the mass of wolves, which was next to impossible. The Moonstone pack had about 250 wolves, and it seemed like every single one of them was there. The sun was slowly setting behind the hills as the wolves gathered around the campfire to warm themselves. There were several tables with all kinds of food and 2 large speakers on the side with a pop song blaring from them that had all the teenage wolves bobbing their heads. Zach thought, what garbage people listen to these days. The 90s and early 2000s had the best music in my opinion. "Where is your mate, Alpha?" Zach growled at Hunter, who immediately covered his mouth by biting into the noodles. Even after knowing that Freya was Zach's mate, Hunter continued to drool over her, constantly irritating his wolf. Hunter had no respect for relationships at all. If he liked a girl, he'd go after her until either someone taught him a lesson or the poor girl gave in. Hopefully, Freya wouldn't fall for his stupid seduction tactics, or he'd have to have a serious talk with Zach's fist. "Alpha, Zach." Zach turned to Alpha Nathan and nodded. "Alpha, Nathan." He raised his eyebrows, looking at the beer in his hand. "I hope you are enjoying the bonfire so far." "It is definitely interesting," Zach muttered, glancing at some of the teenage wolves who were dancing a little too inappropriately. It was a good thing that the "don't get drunk" rule existed. Zach couldn't imagine what would happen if there were horny, drunk wolves running around everywhere. The whole campfire wouldn't be PGG then. "Dad, please tell me, Gabriella is still helping with dinner," Oliver called out as he left the pack house, trying to pull a white hoodie over his head. "She is. I asked her where she was a few minutes ago, via mind transfer." Oliver sighed in relief. "Good, I think Tyrese is going to eat us alive if she finds out what we're doing here. We're a little behind schedule." "Oliver, get your ass over here. I am not done yet." He groaned and rubbed his face in annoyance as Freya walked toward them. His wolf moved forward to excitedly examine his mate. "Horny little rascal," Zach sighed. She'd her hair up in a bun. Zach thought that was called a topknot and was wearing the same white hoodie as Oliver. Her long legs were covered by a pair of dark, skinny jeans that he liked. I mean, his wolf liked them. Zach thought she looked good. She waved a roll of black tape at Oliver. "You are not doing this for you. You are doing it for your best friend. So grow some balls and stop whining." Zach rolled his eyes and turned his back on her so she could finish whatever she was doing. He watched as she bit off a piece of tape with her fangs and carefully stuck it on Oliver's hoodie. Her eyebrows drawn together in concentration and her lower lip clamped between her teeth. His wolf purred at the sight. Zach could feel her wolf perk up as she caught the scent of them. She shuffled her feet uncomfortably, causing Zach's lips to press into a grin against his beer bottle. The mating bond was getting to her too. "Okay, done. You get to go and be horny," Freya said, ruffling Oliver's hair. Oliver grumbled softly to himself and adjusted his cap as he walked toward a group of men dressed the same way. Zach thought, were they part of a cult or something? What was it about the outfits? "Okay, I think that is all of them," Freya shouted happily, dropping the tape on one of the tables and rubbing her hands on her jeans. "How long do you guys have?" asked Alpha Nathan, looking at his watch. "Well, actually, we were supposed to start 5 minutes ago, so I am not really sure. Evelyn said she'd pick me up when Tyrese is ready. He is obviously trying to keep his pants on right now." Just as the words left her mouth, a dark-skinned girl ran up to her. "Come on, girl. Tyrese has finally found his balls. We need to go, and we need to go now." Robert went to get Gabriella. "Shit." Freya grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the group, which included Oliver. Zach's wolf sighed and rolled onto her back in a daze as her scent wafted toward them. Zach had to admit that she smelled fantastic. She must have showered or something, because she smelled like honey mud. He could bury his nose in her neck and would never get enough of her scent. Zach felt the blood rush to his abdomen at the sudden image that came to mind, and groaned softly. The last thing he needed was to get hard in front of all these people. Suddenly the music stopped, and everyone turned to see what was going on. Another song started playing, and the crowd began to disperse for some reason. Zach nodded to Chance and Reese, who followed him to the front of the line of wolves. There stood a group of wolves with their backs turned to them. They all wore white hoodies with letters on them. Zach raised an eyebrow at the back of Freya's head. If she was planning to do what he suspected, then she'd just decreased her chances of becoming his Luna. He couldn't have an immature Luna. She'd only embarrass him, and that was unacceptable. Zach crossed his arms and waited, his eyes staring into her back like daggers. She could clearly feel his gaze because she stiffened slightly and clenched her fists. There were a few shouts, and a few wolves stepped aside to let a blonde girl through. A pack warrior pushed her down on a chair as she stared at the group in shock. "Tyrese, what are you doing?" she breathed out. One of the wolves turned and waved at her before giving someone a thumbs up. A song began to play, and Bruno Mars's voice rang out from the speakers. Zach's eyes widened as he realized what was happening. The wolf was about to propose to the girl. The group began their little performance, which Zach couldn't really describe because he was too busy watching one particular person. Freya was really a good dancer, and his wolf puffed out his chest proudly. She'd certainly fit in at those alpha balls. Shut up and watch the dance. You are just jealous because she dances better than you. Shut up. I don't care how she dances. I care that she doesn't make a fool of us. His wolf growled and was about to retort something, but he quickly interrupted him as the group lined up. They turned in time to the music so they could see the letters on their backs again. There were several jolts and screams as everyone realized what was happening. The letters on the hoodies read, "Will you marry me?" The wolf, who'd waved to the girl earlier, knelt down and panting heavily pulled out a small box. "Gabriella, the moon goddess couldn't have given me a better companion. I cannot put into words how much I love you and how blessed I feel to have you by my side. Will you make me the happiest wolf in the universe and marry me?" There were several sighs and aha cries from the females as the blonde burst into tears and nodded her head vigorously. The male stood up and pulled his mate into his arms to kiss her passionately, which sent the whole pack into an uproar. A small smile tugged involuntarily at Zach's lips as he watched the happy couple. "That could be you and Freya one day," Dixon said. "Maybe." Zach said no more than that. His wolf already knew he was thinking of her. Although he'd said several times that he didn't want a mate, it was rare moments like these when he sometimes longed for one. Of course, he didn't have a mate in the past, so the pain didn't last long, and he was fine the next minute. But now that he'd found Freya, it felt like the pain in his heart was even stronger. It was filled with longing, the desire to have a deep relationship with his mate, like the happy couple standing before him. He closed his eyes for a few moments and took a deep breath. He'd to pull himself together. There is no way I'd accept Freya before this month is over, and she proves she is worthy enough to be my mate. I just can't. It is about the pack that I've worked day and night to bring back to life. The pack that relied on me to make the right decisions. The pack that needed a proper Luna, and I am going to make sure they get one, whether she is my true mate or not. Zach, Chance's voice, interrupted his flow of thoughts. Zach's eyes snapped open to look into his worried face. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. Zach nodded and cleared his throat gruffly. "Yeah, I am fine. Is there a problem?" Chance exchanged a glance with Reese, who just shrugged. Before he could say anything else, Alpha Nathan walked over and patted Zach on the shoulder. "Well, I hope you'll come with us to the pack run. It would be a shame if you didn't," he said, nodding toward the valley where the pack members were gathering after congratulating the pair. Zach nodded and followed him down the hill, taking off his jacket as he got ready to change. "Please let me take control. I must meet my mate. Her wolf is calling for me," Dixon pleaded. Zach sighed and reluctantly agreed. Maybe Dixon would keep quiet about their mate for a few hours if Zach allowed him some time with her. Zach quickly undressed, ignoring the looks he was earning from some of the unmated females, and slipped into his dark brown wolf. His wolf happily stretched his legs and plunged into the crowd to find Freya in the midst of all these wolves. The familiar scent of honeyed umbles clouded his senses as they came closer to the head of the line. She was standing there next to another wolf, yelping and wagging her tail. Their wolf was beautiful. Her fur was a hazel color that appeared bronze in the moonlight. She'd a strong build because she'd trained so much. The only strange thing was that her tail was blonde. "Let's pull her tail," demanded Dixon. "What the hell are you talking about?" His wolf ignored him and leapt toward them, wagging his tail excitedly. Dixon stood behind her, panting softly, as he let his gaze rest on his mate's tail. "Shit," Zach sighed. Her tail touched his muzzle as it wagged back and forth. He was surprised. She hadn't noticed their scent yet. "Isn't she beautiful?" "Mate is cute," Dixon said. His wolf was in heaven right now. He could do whatever he wanted now, and Zach just prayed he didn't do anything stupid. Of course, he never listened to Zack and did exactly what Zack told him not to do. He bent over, took her tail between his teeth and tugged gently. She froze and turned her head around to stare at his wolf with big brown eyes. "Crap," Zack sighed. She blinked and barked at his wolf, as if asking him what he was doing. The idiot just gave her a wolfish grin and barked back. She growled lightly and kicked him with her hind leg before heading towards Alpha Nathan, her tail wagging behind her. He thought, "My wolf has a fucking tail fetish. Great, just great." "Look at her ass," Dixon said. "Shut up. You were just jealous because you couldn't touch her." Zack inwardly screwed up his face. This was going to be a long run. Her wolf quickly moved away from Zack and growled softly. "Mate is so weird. He pulled on my tail. It was so ticklish," Aurora said. Aurora turned to him, and he was still panting and sticking out his tongue like a hungry dog. "But Mate is cute," Aurora added. Freya rolled her eyes, but smiled anyway. Aurora went back and forth so often. One minute she was complaining about him, the next she was raving about him. Freya couldn't blame her, though. The mating bond worked its magic and it was hard to resist. Freya only wished that Zack would accept it. Freya's heart felt like someone had crushed it every time she thought about it. She didn't think he understood the value of a partner, that no one could love you more than she could and make you feel the same way she did. Freya learned her lesson about mates the hard way. She made the mistake of rushing into a relationship when she was 17 years old. The wolf she was with made her so happy. She thought that if she never found a partner, she could possibly be with this guy because he was rejected by his partner. He was so sweet, and she never doubted his feelings for her. Looking back, she realized how wrong she was. He was slick, too slick. Every time he canceled her dates, he'd an excuse ready. He kissed her gently to distract her from serious conversations. With his friends, he exchanged grins every time they passed them. She was so silly and naive. It wasn't until he cheated and humiliated her that she realized he could never love her. She could remember that day like it was yesterday. Flashback. Freya was on her way to the packing house to drop off some groceries when she heard voices from behind the cabins. Specifically, Bryant's voice. She quickly set the groceries down on the island and walked over to greet him. Before she could turn to the corner, he said something that stopped her dead in her tracks. "She hasn't given me her virginity yet, but she has admitted that she loves me, so pay up. Each of you owes me $200. There were a few laughs as her heart broke. "Are you going to break it off then? Or are you waiting to take her virginity?" "It doesn't really matter, honestly. I am already fucking Diana, and she is great in bed, so I am pretty satisfied. I'll probably stop in a couple of weeks or so, unless she decides she is ready to have sex, then I'd probably hold off a little longer." A loud laugh rang out. She put her hand over her mouth to stifle a sob. She thought, how could I be so clueless? How could he do this to me? Was I really that stupid? Her heart felt as if someone had squeezed the life out of it. Her eyes watered with every word he said. Her head was pounding. She could no longer breathe. Suddenly, there was a shuffle, and she came face to face with Bryant. His eyes widened when he saw her tear-streaked face. "Freya," he breathed, "what are you doing here?" She swallowed hard, the lump in her throat. So this is what heartbreak felt like. She thought, "Does it even matter?" She whispered hoarsely. His friends exchanged glances, and some of them stared guiltily at the floor. They only felt guilty because she'd found out about their stupid bets. She turned to walk away when Bryant grabbed her hand. "No, wait. Let me explain." She shook him off and ran toward her house. She couldn't stand his presence any longer. She needed to be alone. "I am so sorry." Her wolf finally stirred in her mind after ignoring her for several months. "It is okay. I am sorry he did this to you. But do you understand why I want you to wait for your mate? He is the only one who can love us. You are right. I was foolish to think I could ever have a relationship with anyone else. I'll wait for my mate no matter how long it takes. End of flashback. Freya. Her train of thought came to a halt as Evelyn continued to angrily link her with her thoughts. Her she-wolf shook out her fur and eyed her she-wolf curiously. Evelyn gave Freya a wide grin, her hazel eyes flashing with amusement. Did your mate just pull your tail? Freya groaned. How many people saw that? Evelyn was busy sniffing a tree stump, but she turned and grinned. A lot of people. I am pretty sure people were shocked to see the big bad alpha pulling a tail. How perverted. Didn't think he was into that sort of thing. Shut up, Freya growled, thankful they were in wolf form, so Evelyn couldn't see her blush. Do you want me to educate you on naughty things? Eve. She shook out her black fur and gave Freya a smug smile. You are so innocent. Freya sparkled at her and looked around at the other wolves. They were just waiting for the pack warriors to give them the all-clear signal. Princess. Her wolf turned to her father's wolf and respectfully bowed her head. His wolf looked at her carefully to make sure they hadn't been hurt in the time he'd been gone and walked toward her. He brushed his fur over there so that his scent would stick to them. His wolf laid his head on hers and licked her ear. Daddy, she complained, trying to move away. I am trying to protect you from the unmated males, sweetie. They will take advantage of your wolf form and try to attack you. You know they're hornier in wolf form. She growled and let him continue licking her ears and neck. When he was satisfied, his wolf puffed out his chest and growled appreciatively. Good now. No one will touch you. Where is your brother? I'll have to do the same to him. Some of the females in the pack can get a little too playful for my taste. Just as the words left his mouth, Oliver's wolf approached them. Nathan immediately jumped up to lick his ears, but Oliver yelped and ran off with Nathan chasing after him. Oliver found it so embarrassing when his dad wanted to rub his scent on him, which it was since they were adult wolves. But that didn't stop his dad. Evelyn's wolf nudged Freya, and they heard the howl of the pack warriors, letting them know it was safe to run. Freya's wolf yelped and ran into the forest, following the mass of wolves. She sighed happily, forgetting everything that was happening around her as she ran her heart out. It was a great feeling to be so free. Zach stayed out of Freya's way as much as possible the next day. He didn't want her to think that just because his wolf was in love with her, he was too. She seemed to have noticed his behavior, but didn't say a word. He only felt her eyes following him, sometimes scrutinizing him. Then he wondered if she really wanted him. Most wolves would have tried to talk to him and get closer to him by now. She pretended not to feel the attraction, and it bothered him much more than he cared to admit, thanks to his wolf's constant grumbling. It got under his skin. Zach shook his head to get rid of his thoughts, but he couldn't. There is no point in doubting whether she want me or not. Of course she want me. She is probably one of those mates who clings to her mate as much as they can, practically worshipping his feet. Someone had to do it, and it is obviously not me. I've to take care of my pack. His wolf growled at his thoughts, which gave Zach pause. This is ridiculous, he muttered, putting the pen down and rubbing his throbbing temples. He couldn't concentrate on anything today. His thoughts turned to only two things, rogues and Freya. She was supposed to go into heat today, and he was just waiting for someone to send him a mind link about it. He'd no idea what he would do when he found out. His wolf hadn't commented on it yet, but Zach knew he was ready to mark her as soon as she started her heat cycle, which was out of the question. Zach honestly felt bad for the female wolves. They'd to go through menstrual cycles, estrusy heat cycles, and the pain of childbirth. It was a never-ending ordeal, even if there were a few good results. His wolf happily interfered with his thoughts and produced a picture of a pregnant Freya. Zach quickly shook his head before he could even voice his thoughts on the image and ran his hand through his hair. Son of a bitch. Suddenly, An intoxicating smell flooded through the door and made him freeze. The smell of honey buns, mixed with something equally intoxicating, filled his nostrils. He bit his lip as the intoxicating scent grew stronger with each passing moment. His heart pounded wildly in his chest as his jeans tightened around his crotch. On the other side, his wolf growled and clawed at him, demanding to be released. A shiver ran down his spine as he stared at the door, half shocked and half aroused. Freya had finally come into heat. Zack was so screwed. His wolf was begging to be let out, and he was struggling to keep him in. "Calm down now," said Zack. "Go to the mate. Mark mate, mate's ours." His breathing became ragged as his wolf grew stronger with each passing moment. Her scent intensified his desire to be let out. His fingers clutched the edge of the table tightly, turning his knuckles white. A loud roar escaped him as his wolf emerged. "Damn, stay down. You can't come out," Zack demanded. "Mate, go to mate now." Dixon didn't care about anything or anyone except Freya at the moment, which was both good and bad. The bad news was that he was ready to hurt or kill anyone who got in his way. The good news was that Zack could convince him to calm down using Freya as bait. "You are going to scare her. She won't want you," Zack said. He immediately calmed down at what Zack said, but he didn't back down. "Doesn't mate want us anymore?" asked Dixon. It took Zack a second to figure out what he meant, because his grammar was getting worse the more primitive he got. "She won't want you if you are like this." Zack prayed in his mind to the moon goddess that Dixon would back down a little. If he didn't, Zack couldn't leave this room without him hurting someone. There was only so much Zack could do to control him. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, causing his wolf to scramble again. Zack felt his claws and fangs protrude as his body began to surrender to his wolf. "Zack, open the door," roared Chance. Zack's claws dug into the wood of the desk, leaving deep scratches. He dropped to his knees and let out a low growl through his gasp. His wolf pushed him completely out of his thoughts as he continued to try to take control. There was a loud thud from the other side of the door, and another before the door fell off its hinges and landed on the floor with a thud. "Shit, Zack, you can't stay here," Chance snarled, trying to get closer to him, but Zack roared loudly, flashing his fangs. Chance froze and stared at him anxiously. A minute later, Reese stormed into the room and looked at the scene before him. "He is losing control, Chance. We need to get him out of the house," he said, stepping closer to Zack with his hands up to show he meant no harm. His wolf was watching him closely, ready to snap at him if he so much as stepped in the wrong place. Chance held out his hand, and his gaze fell on a small jacket in his hands. "It is Freya's. Her natural scent should put you at ease," he explained gently, trying to get Zack to accept the jacket. "How about we just smother him with it?" suggested Reese. Zack's head turned to Chance, and he emitted a warning growl that made Chance back away nervously. "Ignore him, Zack. Take the jacket, they're your mates," Reese placated, watching Zack's reaction closely. Zack took the jacket with one claw and slowly held it to his nose. The unmistakable smell of Freya filled his senses and made his tense form relax slightly. "Smell it again, Zack. Go ahead." His wolf moved forward and sniffed it, letting out a satisfied growl. "Now, let's go down and have a nice walk in the woods," Reese said, reaching forward to grab his forearm and pull him up. Zack continued to hold his jacket to his nose, as that seemed to calm his wolf immensely. His wolf even let him back into his thoughts. "I want mate. We need to mark mate. There are too many males," Dixon said. "We don't mark them without their consent. I don't care how hard it is. We'll wait or we'll hurt her. Do you understand me?" His wolf remained calm, letting Zack know he wasn't happy about his decision, but was willing to listen for Freya's sake. "Alpha Nathan," Reese called out as they walked down the corridor. Alpha Nathan was hurrying up the stairs to Freya's room when he stopped and looked at them. His eyes widened at Zack's appearance, and he shook his head wearily. "You guys have to make sure he stays outside or in Freya's room. That is not an option, Zack snarled angrily. My wolf is ready to mark her at the first sight. If anything, I'll sleep in a tent, just to be away from her. A rumble vibrated in Zack's chest as he spoke, causing the three of them to tense up. Zack, calm down. Alpha Nathan is just worried about Freya. She needs you right now, but you are in no shape to be with her. You don't understand how much she is suffering. Suddenly, the door to Freya's room opened and Oliver stepped out. Dad, I think we should call the pack doctor. Freya can't stop throwing up. Mom is starting to freak out. Zack's heart was pounding up to his throat, and he quickly held the jacket in front of his nose again, so his wolf would be distracted. Zack was torn about what to do. He could either stay in her room so their wolves could calm down, or he could leave the house and let her suffer alone so his wolf could calm down. On second thought, maybe you should stay, Chance muttered, wincing as a loud whimper came from Freya's room. Oliver opened the door to go back inside, and they could hear her retching from the bathroom. Zack bit his lip, ignoring the stinging pain as his fang broke the skin of his lower lip. What was he going to do? Freya settled down next to the toilet with a groan and laid her head on the cold tiles, grateful for a break between all the retching. It is okay, honey. Mommy's here, her mother whispered from next door, running her fingers through Freya's drenched hair. Freya gave her a weak smile, which she returned with a watery one. Freya winced slightly and groaned as her cramps grew stronger and the urge to retch returned. Freya would never complain about getting her period again. In comparison, her period was a breeze. The bathroom door opened and Oliver slowly walked in with a clean towel in his hand. He squatted down next to her and stroked her forehead with his hand, pulling back the strands of hair that stuck to her skin. Come, he said gently, let's get you cleaned up. Freya grabbed his hand and let him pull her to her feet, swaying slightly and almost falling again. He held her tight and dragged her over to the sink. As she held onto the sink, he let go of her and rummaged in the drawers for her toothpaste. Meanwhile, Freya stared in horror at his reflection. Her skin was pale and blotchy, and her eyes were extremely red, as if she hadn't slept in days. Her hair, on the other hand, was sticking to her face and sticking out in all sorts of directions. Freya grabbed a hair tie and pulled it up into a messy chignon to keep it out of the way. The last thing she needed was hair made of vomit. Suddenly, a wave of pain washed over Freya, and she doubled over, clutching his side. The spasms felt like someone was stabbing her with 1,000 knives. She whimpered and gasped softly, waiting for the pain to subside. There was nothing worse than being aroused and in pain at the same time. Her stomach began to turn rapidly, and she crawled back to the toilet to let out what was left. It got to the point where she'd to gag, but nothing came out. Nathan, we need to get the doctor or let Zack into her room. She is getting weaker and weaker. Her wolf has even stopped communicating with her, Freya heard her mother say as she massaged her back. Zack isn't in the right frame of mind right now. If we let him in, he could hurt her. I made a mind link to the pack doctor, and he should be here any minute. Where is Zack, Dad? Asked Oliver. He is out in the woods trying to calm his wolf down. When he calms down a bit, we can let him in so her wolf can relax. Until then, we'll just have to help her as best we can. I don't remember my heat being this bad, her mother whispered as Freya fell onto her back and laid her head in her lap. She took a wet towel and wiped the sweat from Freya's face. It is harder for her because Zack didn't accept the bond, Nathan said. Great. So she'd to suffer the consequences of her mate's decisions. Freya tried to reach out to her she-wolf, but she wouldn't let her. Freya had no idea how she was coping, but she knew Aurora was blocking her, so she wouldn't have to feel her pain too. She has got the chills. Oliver, get a blanket from the linen closet, Jennifer muttered. It took a few moments for Freya to realize she was shivering violently. Goosebumps formed all over her skin as Jennifer tried to warm Freya with her body heat. Let's get her to bed, Nathan said, continuing into the bathroom. He squatted down and picked her up, looking at her sadly. He could feel his wolf running anxiously back and forth in his head. He carried Freya back to her room and laid her gently on the cotton bedding. The moment her head touched the pillow, she closed her eyes and expelled a shaky breath. The heat cycle was far too much for her body to handle. Freya heard someone enter the room and soft chatter as her body oscillated between consciousness and unconsciousness. Finally she gave up, and the world around her grew darker and darker until it was almost black and the soft chatter could barely be heard. Her eyes finally closed completely, and she let herself faint,